Welcome to this episode of Leaders of Transformation. This series is about going behind the scenes into the minds of those that are succeeding with our transformations and adoptions. It's no mistake or it's no secret that we've been failing for over a decade and we continue to fail. And that's why we created this series, to get you into the mindset of those that are succeeding, demystify their success and how they move forward. Our guest today is Mr. Paul McKeithan. Paul is an exemplar transformational leader, and I've had the privilege to see his leadership in action. What I can tell you about Paul in the teams is the trust he creates from his teams. There is no other. And that is why what I'll share, even though he's humble, I will share with you that pretty much 60 to 70% of our audience, 60% of our world's population has been impacted or affected by the transformations that Paul has led. So with that, Paul, welcome to the show and thank you for being a guest.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. So one of the things that we talk about is, and we've had conversations about, is success. And so as that exemplar transformational leader, well, how do you, what does success mean to you?
When you talk about defining like a digital transformation, one of the things I always look at is putting transformation first, right? And focusing on the transformation piece. Transformation obviously is just change and changing in the direction that you want it to go. And so it's really important you define that direction. The digital part is just a tool. It's just a means of that transportation. I think sometimes we get those backwards.
Yeah. No, agree. And one of the things, if I remember right, from our experiences and stuff, was that there was a time where you were really providing vision to the team. And that to me is where, when you were with the guys and we were huddled up and it was like almost like a coach giving the team the pep talk. And so to me, that was my experience of you, in that I felt that was the way that you did that. You had empathy, you were working with the team. And that to me is something that really personified your leadership.
You mentioned trust, right? And I think trust is something that comes from leadership. And I think it's very much a part of leadership. I always surround myself, and it's not hard, with people who are smarter than me, right? And if you get those people in the room with you, you have to trust them. And so I always view it as a goal to look at where we want to go, let the team run, and just keep reminding them of the destination, even though I have no idea how to get to the destination myself. And that's okay. You can be honest about that. You can be open about that. Like, I don't know how to get there, but I know where I want to go.
Yeah. Trust in the process.
The process. Absolutely.
That's what to me, that's what it's, I always, trust in the process.
Yeah. We talk about, fail fast. And I think we've all learned that that's a good idea, right? Is to fail fast with the idea to learn from your mistakes quickly, right? But achieving a fail fast environment is really difficult to do if leadership's not willing to fail, right? And so if you're not willing to trust the process and you're only measuring off of KPIs and results, then your team's not going to fail, or they're not going to tell you about it, right? So you have to be careful, given the room to breathe, giving them an opportunity to breathe.
So, the other thing too is like when you're in the flow, like you said, you're there, you're working with the team, things are going on. How do you work with that? How do you, tie yourself into and make it smooth for the groups? Because that's another thing I noticed about, observing you in action, is how smoothly things transition from event to event, circumstance to circumstance. There were, other leaders may have a little bit of a freak out, right? Or their self-doubt creeps in, or whatever you want to call it. But how do you deal with that? Because that's...
Have you heard the statement, be like a duck, calm on the surface and paddling like hell underneath?
Yeah.
I think there's an art to that. There's no doubt that I've had freak out moments. I've had a lot of mistakes and a lot of failures as well. It goes back to the trust, right? If I know that we've got quality, smart people around, let them do the things. It's going to be okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be okay. And I think, you and I were even having a conversation this morning about my daughter racing sports, right?
Right.
It's very similar to that. It's like, you just let them trust the process, not worry about a particular result, embrace that process, and have a little bit of calm stillness that You as a leader freaking out,
Right.
is not going to help the situation.
Right. Right. No, that's wise. So one thing I'm wondering here is when we think about success, has there been a success or a moment of success that where it just really sticks out in your mind? And
Yeah.
why is that you consider that a significant success moment for yourself or your team?
Right. Let me put it in the digital transformation mindset, right?
Yeah.
And back up a little bit of what I said in the beginning of not focusing on the word digital. One of the things that I've failed very quickly on is really wrapped up in the technology of how to digitally transfer something, like, oh, here's the technology and here's the cloud base or whatever. And there's this one project we're working on trying to make a machine smart. I think many of the people in the audience might be able to relate to this, right? We want to make a machine smart, we want to share the data on the cloud, and we were focused on all the things to make that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we forgot who it was transforming. We forgot the impact we were trying to have. And our business wasn't a digital technical business. Our business was actually a business that was 150 years old. It was a business that was actually bringing food to the world, to feed the world. And we were trying to make a particular food in this process. And that still has to be the number one goal. The
Mm-hmm.
digital part just needs to help us do that better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll tell a quick story.
Okay.
I'll never forget the moment I thought we were on the right track. There was this company, and the plant manager there was just kind of lukewarm about this whole digital stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had his numbers to meet and his KPIs to meet, right?
Okay.
And he's the type of guy that wouldn't even let me in the plant. But we started providing this data in a way that his operators used it every day and got better results every day. Not just a dashboard, but something that they used and embraced every day. And I knew that we were on the right path when this guy who wouldn't let me in the door, I'm now sitting in his office at midnight. We're having a technical issue. The technical guy is smarter than me. We're down on the floor trying to figure out how to make this thing connect, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in his office checking. Conversation had died. We're checking emails now, Facebook, whatever, right? He and I were just sharing this space. And he leans over to me and says, Paul, are you good at Excel sheets? And I lied and said, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I am an engineer, so I could do that. And I said, why? He says, can you help me sort this sheet and stuff out?
Mm-hmm.
And he's emailed me a copy of his Excel sheet, and his entire business was on this Excel sheet. I mean, the recipes to all the products, the food products he was making. I could take that spreadsheet and I could start my own company with it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy who wouldn't let me in the door of his plant was now sharing this secret sauce to me, right?
Wow.
And I realized that we had crossed over to what I'll call a digital relationship. We crossed over. We were two people now who had a relationship because we were sharing data digitally,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the trust to do so.
Yeah.
Right. And I never, that had an impactful moment on me, that it was still about people, and the digital stuff is just finding a different way to connect people.
Wow.
So
very insightful, very powerful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So part of the journey of us as transformational leaders is that we're always changing things. So we're the lead change agent
Yeah.
at times, right? So we have adversary, run into adversarial moments, and we
yeah,
run into failures.
Yeah.
So let's take this one step at a time. So from an adversary perspective, when you run into that, impediments, things like that, what's your take on that, and how do you, what's your mindset, or how do you deal with that?
Right. Well, there's no secret that nobody likes change, even as transformational leaders, right?
Don't tell anybody.
I think you have to embrace the fact that even we don't like change. Right. Humans, it's nature. I mean, how many times have we held a conference and when we take a break, everybody comes back and sits back in the same chair.
Right.
We're just wired that way,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
like comfort. We don't like change. And you have to embrace that, and you cannot force anybody to change. So if you run into an adversary, their opinions are valid,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the only way to have them open to even a conversation about the change you're trying to make is to validate their opinions, is to listen to them, give them room to be adversaries. I think a lot of times transformational leaders try to shut down the naysayers,
Okay.
try to make them quiet.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you a voice.
Right.
I think the best thing to do is give them a voice. Let them be in the room and argue back.
Yeah.
Because if they're right and your transformation's not good transformation, then it needs to stop. You need to find a different transformation, right?
Yeah.
And that person, let's assume that person has value to the organization and has some knowledge and stuff. You need the devil's advocate in the room, so to speak.
Well, you need their buy-in because
you need their input. You need and when they start giving input, and you start listening, and you start finding ways to make your transformation better because of their input, the next thing you know, they've got buy-in.
Right.
And when they have buy-in, now they're fighting against changing what somebody else changing your stuff, right? Those are the guys you want on the team to make that change stick.
Right. No, very good. And then I know you mentioned the word failure a couple times already, like you failed and all that. So from a failure perspective, how do you deal with that? How do you help your team deal with that?
Right. And I think, any business has a hierarchy. Whether you want to say we're all on the same team, we win as one, we're all together, any of that stuff. That's fine. I love that culture, right? Yeah. But there's still a natural order of things. I mean, some people have different responsibilities than others, and everybody's valuable in the organization, but there is that order, right? And I can tell you that if the leaders of the organization don't create KPIs to allow for failure, the team won't embrace those failures. They will not go there. So that one really starts with leadership.
Yeah.
And the leader has to give them room to fail.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you know this, but I'm just going to call it out. I mean, failing is learning.
Yes.
I mean, and I know you've already mentioned that, but I just want to exemplify or pull that, make sure that we connect those dots here for the audience is that, this is how we learn today.
I think a lot of companies, I'll pause here. I think a lot of companies give that lip service.
Yeah.
They make nice slogans. Failure is learning, not to take yours away.
No, that's all good. That's all good.
They make fail fast, learn quick, whatever. Right. They do this, but they put them as band-aids over top of their true KPIs. Like, we're gonna talk about this stuff, but I'm still gonna give you a bonus to you on this, and you're gonna still have to meet these numbers, and you still have to meet those numbers and stuff like that. And that's not addressing the issue. You've got to set KPIs that allow that to happen. You've got to set goals that allow that room to happen. You got to make it real.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is what you're reminding me of is I teach the DAS's leadership certification, or DevOps leadership, and that's exactly some of the details we get in the nuts and bolts as a transformational leader, digital transformation. How do you make that real? And I just that to me, when you were talking, reminds me back to working with Sebastian and Rick and the others. That when we were putting that working on that curriculum with our students, it's just that, and work with other leaders around the world, that has been the missing piece that I think for a lot of leaders, they don't have the detail of how to do that. And that's what you just mentioned, it was the KPIs, was that secret sauce behind the scenes. So from the failure perspective, just like in the success, have you had a significant moment or just a failure moment where it was like you either learned a lot or whatever that just, you really want to share with the group to say, hey, this is why this is important to me that I, went through this.
Are you just trying to dig up past memories?
Yeah.
I mean, there's too many to count. So let me see if I can pull one out of the,
okay.
I think the failure moment would be trying to force feed a solution to a customer that solution doesn't fit. I'll give you a great example of this. We were working with a globally large food supplier, right? And we had created this IoT type based cloud service data sharing solution that would add value on some things, right? Not important. But the way we were trying to deliver that was in our way, not their way, right?
Yeah.
And so the challenge there was that, and we just weren't willing to be flexible. And I think that was the takeaway from it. We weren't flexible.
Mhm.
The failure on our side is we took that as though our solution was bad. And we started going a different direction when our solution was fine. We just weren't adapting it correctly. And so I think that's one of the things you have to be careful of, is that there was an example of where we failed
Mhm.
and we took the wrong learnings from it. The solution was fine. We just weren't connecting the technical stuff in a way that met the customer. So we were not being flexible in technical connection,
Right.
but the solution was fine. I know that's complicated and a lot to dig in just
No,
2
no,
minutes, but
no,
it's I think that was one of the things to take away from it, is that what's the old saying? I don't know if this translates, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yep.
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 I think we had a good solution, but because we were stubborn, we lost our path.
No, and for audience, I mean, this is what the show is about, right? We're providing you them in getting into the mind of those that are succeeding with these adoptions and transformations, which is a good segue, I think, into persistence, right? So you've got these successes. We've talked about failures, but underlying, these transformations are complex. They're hard. They take months, if not years, because we're talking about true change and then making it stick, using your words. I think you said that earlier. So, what I'm curious on is, how do you, for yourself, maintain or be persistent day in and day out, month in and month out? How does that work for you? What makes you wire that, or work that way, or think that way?
I think expectations are key, right? So you need to go into this with the mindset that change never stops. Like, the transformation is never complete, right? Maybe a project's complete.
Okay.
But the maybe I'll put the words into a culture.
Okay.
Like, culture is something you have to work on every day, right?
Okay.
And I think if you want to have a good transformation culture, it's something you work on every day, working on the trust every day, working on showing up, working on how you're being, right? And I think there's a lot of self-work to do with that.
Okay.
I'll go back to what I said earlier. Even transformational leaders don't like to change.
Right.
But we change anyway. Now, that's a lot of self-work on ourselves of how we're being. Now, our innate self doesn't like change.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we have to listen to that. We can choose to be a person of change. Right. And I think that's something you have, work on in all aspects of life. That might make me mad, but I can choose not to be mad. Right. So it's how you're being in the moment, and those little moments add up as you're trying to develop trust with your team. As a team member fails and you're getting pressure from your boss and the business and the dollars and cents and stuff like that, to remember that you've created a culture of failure and learn from it, and not have a moment where that's not okay. Because the moment you have that moment of it not being okay, guess what? You just told that team member that my failure conversation is just speak and not action.
Right.
So it's a lot of reminding yourself of how you're being in a particular moment.
Yeah. And I think that's key, because the next question I was going to ask was going to be about how you motivate others, or how do you keep that persistence for others, but you pretty much answered that right now.
Walk the talk.
Yeah. No, very true. Very true. So one of the things that, as I think about my experiences with you, and just the great career that you've had, and the tremendous things you've done, there's, from a leadership perspective, is there anything from your past, or moments, or, that made you who and what that you can say, okay, that's what made me who I am today, or, at that moment, or that lesson, that thing that I learned is really, that was my turning moment. Is there anything like that you can go back into?
I think I would be remiss to just say that how I was brought up. I grew up in a family of hard workers. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial environment. just for curiosity on the call. At one point in my life, I was a pig farmer, which is fantastic. But I was 17 years old and started my own pig farm type thing. And whether it was that, I was never the smartest kid in the room, never the fastest kid on the basketball team or the soccer team or whatever. And I just always had to work for it, right? And always had to show up and be mindful of how I was being. I didn't know how to put it in words back then, right?
Yeah.
And always had to work for that, and always had to work for everything I had, and take care and treat those moments special. I don't know. I'm fumbling with this question.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Questions to answer on a digital transformation forum, but and that's okay. It's I think maybe the underlying piece there is that I always learned early on that although I didn't want it, I needed help.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I was very stubborn. I'm smiling because I just had a great thing with my daughter this morning, who's just like me, who's extremely stubborn and doesn't want any help at all.
Right.
But the greatest lesson I ever learned was to ask for help and surround yourself with people who can help you.
Excellent advice. And so for this sort of leads into that. So the next question is going to be the next generation leaders, right? Our next generation out there in the audience, they want to strive to be the next Paul, or they want to, do what Paul has done, or, things like that maybe, right? So if you had to, for growing or getting our next generation leaders out there, what advice do you have to them? I mean, totally ask for help. Okay. That's the first one.
Now, oh my gosh, this next generation of kids, they can run circles around us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I volunteer coach a cross country team at a STEM high school right across the street from where we're sitting. Man, those kids are intelligent, and capable, and have resources at their fingertips that we could only dream of, right? And understand this digital world, like breathing air, right?
Yeah.
My advice to them is to work on understanding the people around them like they understand their digital world. Because at the end of the day, every business that is out there ultimately is successful because it impacts somebody in some way, right? We whether it's a food business, a health business, an automobile business, a luxury business, consumer goods, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the equation, it's about people.
Yeah.
And so if you don't understand relationships and people, so I guess for the kids, I would say is get in relationships.
Okay.
Love one another, be kind to one another, learn how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Learn how, because we can't teach them about this digital. Right. You maybe can, but I can't, right? But I think that's the part where they're going to have to be stronger than us in relationship, because sometimes their relationships will be on different platforms than you and I sitting here together in this room. Exactly. So that's going to be their biggest challenges, and they can do it. I mean, they have it even tougher than we did, but they can do it, and it's going to be critical to their success, even building trust inside of organizations and things of that nature. Imagine creating culture and building trust in an organization where you only talk to each other remotely, and there's going to be situations in the future where, even now today, where kids' careers might be established and started that way.
Exactly.
Where my career was established, making sure I walked down the hall fast, carrying a stack of papers so I looked busy.
Right. We've come a long way since then, haven't we?
We've come a long way.
All right, so we're almost there. Okay. So I'm gonna pry a little bit here, so I hope you don't mind. But so if you had to go back and look at what is your kryptonite or your Achilles heel or that thing that you really struggled with as that leader to get to where you're at today, what could you share with our audience with that? What was really tough for you? Or what is tough? I mean, not to expose, I don't want to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We talked about persistence, and I gave you a great answer of persistence and what is persistence. That's still my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
That's still my biggest challenge. I think that's probably why I had such a good answer, because I think about it so much.
Okay.
Is that I have to work on that. I really have to work on that persistence of making sure that I'm being that type of leader that I have a vision of being, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's some of the keys to any success, is that just the recognition and knowing that's something I have to work on. I have to work on. I have a lot of passions in my mind. I can get distracted easily. I think some people can relate to that. I'm the type of guy who can start 10 things and never finish one of them. But that's okay. I recognize it, and I make sure that work hard and make that persistence show.
Okay. And let's flip that around. So, if being a superhero, what is your superpower?
Empathy.
Okay.
Right. Not scared to show it in the workplace, but really try to feel and understand what it's like in the other person's shoes. Even that advocate who's screaming and saying what we're doing is stupid.
Right.
Right. I'm like, I get that. I get how they can say that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. And I think that's, somebody told me, I learned from a leadership coach one time, and that's something that's really stuck to me, is that I get how you can say that. And if you can say that to somebody,
and they believe it, they feel it,
or even but more importantly, you feel it.
Yeah.
That you get how John could say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you don't at that moment.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If you come from that point of view and have that empathy, I think that opens a lot of room for this relationships and stuff we talk about, and that applies to transformational relationships, it applies to digital transformation. It goes across the board.
All right. Well, as our time is winding down together on this segment of Leaders of Transformation, as we do customary here, is we allow our guests to have the final word. So with that, Paul, any final words of wisdom for our audience?
Final word. We use the word persistent, but just stay at it, right? You're creating a culture. Culture is the lifeblood of any company, of any organization, of any relationship. We talk about that. So just remember that requires work, and that work never ends. So, but that work is fun.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. That's the rewarding part. If it was easy and could end tomorrow, it wouldn't be worth doing.
Yeah. You know what? You used the word fun. Listen here for a moment, because you're going to hear that again.
Okay.
All right. So for those, Paul, thank you for being an extraordinary guest. Audience, the amount of wisdom and insights you've been given onto this show has been extraordinary. And again, just thank you so much. I'm honored to have you as our guest on the show. For our audience, I hope that you gained insight and value into this session. And remember that our adoptions and transformations are not the destination, but a journey. And the decisions that you make as our leaders today affect the future for all of us tomorrow. Paul, thank you again.
My pleasure.
And for the DASA team here, thank you for allowing me to host such a wonderful opportunity as we gain insights, and look forward to the next episode of Leaders of Transformation, where we continue our insight into the back end of how the people think, the leaders that are succeeding today, how they think and move forward. Until then, lead well, be inspiring to your people, and remember to have fun in your adoption and transformation. Thank you.